Sea mists rolled across Dragonstone at dawn, coating every basalt spire in a silver sheen that refracted the red glow of dragonfire above. Prince Maelor Targaryen stood upon the Widow's Walk and watched the horizon burn with amethyst flashes, the light of sky lances wielded by riders he had never seen, borne on wings that beat the sunrise into shattered pieces of gold. Even from this distance he felt the air tremble with each passing dragon, as if the very breath of the world had grown afraid to move lest it draw their wrath. He pressed gloved fingers to the black stone battlement and felt the fortress shudder beneath him. For a heartbeat, he believed Dragonstone itself wished to cringe, to crawl back into the sea and hide among kelp and cold currents. Behind him, the courtyard exploded with motion. Stable boys abandoned unsaddled horses to sprint for the safety of vaulted corridors. Maesters in brown and yellow hurried to extinguish brazier fires so no stray spark might tempt a panic-stricken worm to stoop. Smiths dropped half-hammered greaves and ran weeping for their children. Yet a hush lay under the clamor, a stunned, speechless recognition. Valyria had returned. The doom they had all been taught to fear was not a cataclysm locked in memory, nor a children's tale for frightening apprentices. It was very much alive, and it had come across the narrow sea armored in living flame. Maelor's elder sister, Queen Rhaenys of the Seven Kingdoms since their father's death 2 winters before, burst from the tower stair in a swirl of crimson velvet. Her crown sat at a desperate angle above hair the color of newly minted silver coins, eyes the shade of storm lilac fixed upon the eastern sky. She said nothing at first, merely raised one hand, fingers trembling as though unsure which command could possibly matter when the world itself had shifted. Maelor expected fear, or perhaps the iron calm she had shown when lords rebelled in the Westerlands last year. Instead he saw wonder, raw and salt-bright as tears. An ancient roar drowned every other sound. Wing-beat thunder pressed Maelor's lungs flat, forced breath from his body. A beast larger than any he had read of, larger even than Balerion, if the old chroniclers told true, glided over Dragonmont. Scales glowed like molten pewter. Its rider wore robes of woven gold and a mirrored helm that reflected the sunrise in 1,000 shards. Sigils of the freehold fluttered at the rider's back, a field of sable sewn with a red-black spiral, each arm depicting a dragon devouring its own tail. The emblem was older than recorded time, carried by the Archons when Valyria was little more than a marsh town dreaming of empire. Rhaenys found her voice. "Maelor, to me," she called, though her tone barely carried above the wind that churned around them. "We will greet our kin." "Kin," he managed, while 1,000 unasked questions swarmed his mind like hornets. "After 200 years?" "Blood is blood," the queen replied, though something in her expression suggested she doubted her own words. They descended through spiraling corridors reeking of fear smoke, the castle quaking with every pass of foreign dragons. Below, the inner yard stood deserted save for a single white hart that had leapt the low wall in panic and splashed its hooves through a fountain's empty basin. The beast froze at Rhaenys' approach, chest heaving, eyes moon-wide. She touched the creature's trembling muzzle. "Even the Godswood stags can feel it," she whispered. "Old Valyria has come for what the Doom denied." A horn call echoed from the seaward battlements. Low, metallic, unlike the coppery blare of Westerosi war horns. The sound was all angles, all cold proclamation. Across the larboard quay, a fleet unlike any Maelor had imagined slid into Blackwater Bay. Prows carved as serpent heads parted the waves, decks bristled with scorpions wrought of polished obsidian. Between each ship glided slender barges bearing saddled dragons chained to pillars of starlight metal, their wings bound with silver mesh. Distant riders guided them as shepherds herd cattle, snapping whips that trailed white sparks. "Mother of mountains," Maelor breathed. "They've leashed their own." Rhaenys shook her head. "Not leashed. Walked aside. These are beasts born to their bidding, as ours once were." She drew a breath that seemed to slice the morning. "Come. Let us not greet them cowering behind arrow slits." They strode onto the eastern dock where a single ship, sleeker, darker than all others, had already thrown down gangplanks. Armor flashed down its gangway, each plate etched with glyphs that twisted under the eye. Their commander removed his helm, and Maelor felt history lurch sideways. The man's features were unmistakable. Valyrian high-cheeked beauty, pointed chin, hair pale as smoke glass. Yet he was no distant cousin. He was the image of portraits hanging in dragon pit galleries, in Iris Valerion, thought incinerated in the doom, but this could not be him. The timeline defied sense. Rhaenys spoke first in liquid high Valyrian. "Welcome, honored dragon lords, to Dragonstone, seat of House Targaryen and of the Seven Kingdoms. I am Queen Rhaenys, blood of Aegon the Conqueror. State your purpose and be received in peace." The commander's answering Valyrian rolled like coals sliding in a brazier. "I am Gennario Orion, Triarch of the 42nd Helion of the Freehold, Archon Designate of Western Reclaiming. Your courtesy honors me, Daughter of Realms, yet titles will not mend what time has broken. We come for what is ours by right of dragonfire and covenant with sky and sea." Din Paul. Rhaenys' jaw tightened. "Westeros is no colony. The Targaryen banners have flown here 2 centuries. We are sovereign." "Your banners," Orion corrected gently, "are bastard echoes of our own. The old blood calls its children home, or else history must be corrected in flame." His gaze swept the docks, lingered on trembling retainers who peeked from behind barrels and winches. "If you kneel now, we shall welcome you into the legions. Kneel, and Dragonstone's princes may take high station when the freehold spreads anew across this continent of snow and green." Maelor bristled. "We do not kneel," he said in imperfect formal Valyrian. A laugh rustled among the visiting captains, like a curtain of steel rings. Orion's amethyst eyes pinned him. "Do not let child's pride carve your epitaph, princeling. When worms clash, cities drown." Rhaenys lifted a hand forestalling her brother's retort. "We will answer your request in council. Hospitality binds us. You and your officers are invited to dine under truce this evening." "Nestigan." Orion inclined his head. "A truce, then, upon salt and smoke," he replied, reciting an oath older than the citadel's oldest tower. "But delay breeds only ashes." King's Landing received the rumor like a gutting blade. By the hour of the owl, small folk gathered at street corners muttering of sky beasts so vast they blotted the stars. In the Red Keep, the High Council erupted in chaotic dread. Lord Edric Arryn, Hand of the Queen, slammed parchment upon the table. Intelligence carried by Raven from Dragonstone. 200 dragons, he barked. Not 2, not 20, 200, with twice that number of fire mages who can bend flame as maesters bend wax. His blue-gray eyes darted from lord to lord, seeking any shape of hope. Sir Brynden Hightower, master of ships, crossed his arms. "Our fleet is a minnow before a kraken. Obsidian-tipped scorpions will shatter oak as readily as bone." Grand Maester Orwell muttered a prayer to a collect of 7 gods, and 20 forgotten. Even the doom spared no remedy for the fires of Valyria. What physic stands against liquid stone poured from the clouds? Yet Lady Nymeria Sand, newly made mistress of whispers, and once a viperous bastard of Dorne, leaned forward with the faintest smile. "Fear not the fangs you can see," she purred, voice like sugared wine. "Seek those hidden under the tongue." Arryn glared. "Speak plain." "In old scrolls," she said, tapping lacquered nails on a silver map, "it is written that dragonfire obeys rhythm. Heat surges, cool intervals. At the moment a dragon exhales, its chest is empty of flame for the span of 3 heartbeats. Strike then, a bolt or spear pierce scale beneath the wing." "Nanman," Hightower snorted. "And how many Balestiers will live long enough to count to 3, while a lizard the size of the sept descends upon them?" She shrugged. "Fewer than we need, more than we deserve. But laughter aside, we have knitter mines in the Stormlands, wildfire casks in the Guildhall cellars. If Valyria wishes to drown Westeros in flame, let flame be our answer." Arryn pressed fingertips to his temple. "Wildfire's ungovernable. A single misjudged gust could raise the capital." "Memswan." Then we raise it first, Nymeria replied softly. Better ashes we rule than a throne of bones we do not. Disgust flared in Bryndon's sea-gray eyes. Madness. Pragmatism, she corrected. Edric turned to the queen's seat at table's end, empty. We speak of war while Rhaenys parleys at the dragon's maw. Send riders. Summon every banner sworn before Aegon's line. We must answer the freehold with steel of our own. On Dragonstone the council chamber smelled of salt, soot, and the faint copper tang of dragons roosting overhead. Orion and 6 of his captains sat at one side of an onyx long table. Rhaenys, Maelor, and their sworn advisors on the other. Between them lay a tapestry depicting Aegon's conquest. 3 dragons unleashing arterial fountains of flame upon Harrenhal. Orion traced the woven crimson threads with one gauntlet. This art lies, he said conversationally. No fortress of men stands against a matured Balerion. Harrenhal stones would have flowed like river mud. Its towers turned to smoking glass. Your forebear softened the tale, lest his lords despair at the truth. Nisander, Rhaenys answered. The truth is told by the tongues that survive. Orion lifted a goblet filled with pale blue liquor. May your tongue prove as durable. He sipped, then set the cup down precisely. I shall speak plainly. The Archons debated long before dispatching us. Some argued it would be mercy to leave this continent to evolve in isolation, to watch its crude faiths and petty crowns convulse until they consumed themselves. Others feared that your diluted line of dragonlords would one day rediscover proper sorcery, spread beyond this rock you claim a kingdom. Ultimately, consensus formed around a reclamation. We shall fold Westeros into the freehold's sphere. Prune surplus kings, elevate those of aptitude, enslave the remainder. A tidy solution. Nah. Slavery is forbidden by law and faith, Maelor said. Orion's smile was thin as a dagger's edge. Everything forbidden is permitted when strength argues the cause. Rhaenys clasped her hands so tightly the veins shone like marble beneath the skin. You will find us unaccommodating soil for seeds of chains. A woman among the Valyrian captains, skin the hue of polished teak, hair pinned with shards of sapphire, spoke for the first time. This land once fed the freehold with silver, gold, amber, and furs. Its harbors birthed fleets of black oaks that carried spears to the summer isles. We remember. You are merely tenants. Names, Captain? Rhaenys asked icily. So my scribes may record whom we bury. I am Lyca Velaros, Stormbinder of the 4th Legion. Then Stormbinder, recall that storms sometimes break their chains. Maelor saw a glint in Lyca's eyes like sun-off ice steel. Whatever answer she intended vanished beneath Orion's raised hand. Queen Rhaenys, I am not without generosity. Kneel, yield your dragons to our cadres for proper training, and I pledge your bloodline shall retain lordship of Dragonstone under freehold oversight. Refuse, and Westeros will provide sport for our lesser hatchlings. Meh. Rhaenys rose, skirts whispering like drawn blades. I will answer at moonrise, she said. Should you seek me before then, remember you stand on Targaryen soil. Orion stood as well, helm tucked beneath one arm. Soil is fleeting, daughter of conquest. Only fire endures. Night fell hard and windless. Torches in the courtyard guttered without breeze, as if even the sea refused to breathe lest flame leap higher. Maelor accompanied his sister to the Dragonmont Eyrie, where Meraxes, her pale-blood she-dragon, slumbered coiled around a vent of steaming earth. The moon painted whorls upon her pearl-white scales, and each breath billowed vapor scented of brimstone. Rhaenys pressed her brow to the beasts, and whispered lullabies in the Valyrian of nurses and night sky. Maelor stood back, unsure whether to interrupt. At last she turned. He is stronger than I expected, she murmured. Not just in dragons. His will is an anvil. If we defy him, we risk every soul beneath our banners. So we yield? Maelor asked, horrified. I did not say that. She stroked Merax's horn ridge. But we must wield terror as keenly as he does. No keener. Westeros united under Aegon because he offered lords a choice between bending the knee or burning. Today the freehold offers us nothing. They presume already to own us. What then? We possess but 12 dragons grown large enough for war. They bring hundreds. 12 is an omen, she said, gaze remote. One for each sworn kingdom. Dragons may be few, but hearts are many. Remember the first men's tales. When giants of ice marched from the north, Crannog spears and children's knives beat them back. We shall find our own children's knives. Nabaranda. She reached into her bodice and drew a small glass vial shaped like a teardrop. Within, wildfire shimmered an eerie green. Maelor, listen. Should the freehold breach the Red Keep, you must ride Sunfire to the city's old pyromancer vaults and command the alchemist guild to flood the tunnels. Then ignite. He stared at the vial. Burn King's Landing itself. Better ashes than chains. She echoed Nymeria Sand's grim counsel, though her voice broke upon the words. Promise me. Maelor took the vial, its heat uncanny despite being stoppered. I promise nothing but to stand at your side. Her smile was proud. Sorrowful. That is all I ask. 3 days later, the Valyrian armada anchored off Blackwater Rush in full war array. King's Landing awoke to a horizon, spined with masts draped in banners of twisting worms. Above, a spiral of dragons filled the firmament, each worm wearing scale armor of night glass and electrum. Their collective wingbeat was an endless drumroll that rattled shutters, splintered church bells, and drove dogs mad. Queen Rhaenys arrived on Meraxes, flanked by Prince Maelor atop Sunfire and Sir Brynden on his jade-green Mount Verdant. They hovered above the mud gate where wildfire catapults waited under green and bronze tarps. In the streets behind, thousands of shield walls bristled. Baratheon antlers, stark direwolves, Tyrell roses, Martell sunspears. Even Greyjoy krakens flew beside Arryn falcons, for once forgetting ancient feuds. A hush swept the city, as if every throat shared a single breath of dread. From the leading Valyrian flagship, Orien and 4 captains rose on their dragons and advanced until the 2 formations faced one another, across a gulf of sky threaded with sunlight. Orien's mount, Westeros, bled sparks from its nostrils that fell like meteors into the bay. Orien's voice boomed, amplified by some sorcery of wind. Westeros, hear the edict of return. Kneel, and live under the law of Valyria. Stand, and die as witness to its rebirth. Daddy. Rhaenys answered with no sorcery, only her lungs, yet every soldier heard. This is the realm we forge with blood, sweat, and bone. We will not barter it for life in gilded chains. If the freehold wishes it, let this city be our pyre. But no. Should we burn, we shall carry Valyria with us into ash. She lifted her right hand. Flame blossomed upon the catapults below. Braziers erupted, and cauldrons of wildfire soared skyward, trailing emerald comets. Simultaneously, Maelor hurled his teardrop vial into the bay. Where it shattered, green fire roared across waves, igniting pitch-soaked hulks, set adrift by fishermen in the night. Orien's eyes narrowed. So be it. He spoke a single Valyrian word that tasted of thunder. The heavens ignited. Dragons on both sides shrieked, converging in a cyclone of teeth, talons, and colliding breaths of molten stone. Flame met flame, red against green, violet against gold. Riders fell screaming from saddles to vanish amid firestorms. Chitterlaw speared at Meraxes, claws tearing through pearl scales, Meraxes counterbit, wrenching a wing joint until bone shattered like pottery. On the walls, scorpions loosed iron bolts fletched with dragonglass. Some found marks, others rebounded into war drums, splintering wood and men alike. Below, wildfire casks exploded against Valyrian prows, sending sailors twisting through sheets of emerald. Yet still legionaries leapt across burning gaps, shields locked, chanting spells that quenched flame around their boots. Nymeria Sand directed alchemists with ruthless poise, her fingers dancing in semaphore to ignite reserves as enemy worms descended. One Valyrian beast crashed upon the street of silk, demolishing 3 brothels in an avalanche of wing and masonry before succumbing to crossbow quarrels fired from 100 shutters. The dying dragon's wail sounded like the citadel horns of old Kiskari ruins, and every child who heard it aged a year in that instant. Maelor and Orien met in midair. Sunfire's gold-white flame intersected Cithrelos's cobalt gout, creating a boiling sphere where colors shredded each other. Maelor leaned hard, guiding Sunfire through the fiery storm until he burst behind Orion's tail and struck downward with a Valyrian steel spear. The point scraped along barding plates, peeling metal, but failed to pierce scale beneath. Orion twisted, answered with a whip of chain tipped by a star-shaped blade. The blade sliced Maelor's pauldron, drawing blood that hissed into mist. Below, Merax's and Laika Velaros' crimson drake locked jaws. Both riders hurled spells. Loops of pale fire clamped around each other's throats. Rhaenys extended her arms, palms blazing with glyphs that shimmered on her skin like living tattoo. Merax's beat upward in a convulsive lunge, driving Laika down into the roof of the dragon pit. Guy rope snapped. Stone ribs crunched inward. The crimson drake flailed, thrashing masonry into dust. Laika tumbled free, robes aflame, landed cat-like upon a collapsing parapet. She drew twin daggers of fused obsidian and ran, nimble as heat mirage, leaping gaps as the dragon pit buckled. Rhaenys dived after, but Orion barked a command that drew half his Sky Legion in weaving formation, shielding Laika's retreat. On the ground, legionaries poured through breaches in the city wall, their curved blades singing at every swing. Yet Westerosi pikemen held alleys choked with burning debris, bottling the invaders where aerolofts could rake them. Above every street, small folk rained chamber pots of lamp oil, torches, even beehives. Children hurled stone marbles beneath legionary boots. Women plunged baking irons into exposed neck seams. A city that had so often devoured itself now fought as one living creature defending its heart. The battle raged from dawn to the moment the sun touched Blackwater's smoking verge. When twilight bled violet across the torn sky, both sides reeled, dragons dropping from exhaustion or pain. Merax's bore wounds that wept glowing ichor. Shithrulos' right eye steamed from a broken socket. Fire still soared above the harbor, yet a hush settled, the ragged collective breathing of armies poised on the edge of ruin. Orion hovered above the ruins of the great Septi. Its marble dome cracked open like an egg. Statues of the Seven toppled in shattered hollows. "Queen Rhaenys," he called, voice hoarse yet resonant. "Enough blood for one day. Look upon your capital. Half ruined, starved of water. Its granaries ash. Yield now, and we will rebuild what we have broken. I swear by the 14 flames." Rhaenys guided Merax's until they faced within a spear's cast. Smoke streaked her face, mingling with dried tears. "You see only stones and timbers," she answered. "I see hearts that will kindle again and again until the sun drowns. Rebuild? You cannot even imagine what it took to build the first time." Orion inclined his head, sorrow in his eyes. "Then we continue." He raised his gauntlet. Valyrian battle midges formed circling sigils of blue-white light. ... Energy hummed, gathering for a final city-shattering spell. Rhaenys inhaled, preparing to hurl Merax's into the maelstrom, though it meant both their deaths. A horn sounded from the north wall. 3 rising notes, sharp as splitting ice. Every ear turned. Rising above the battlements came banners of gray and white, a direwolf over a field of argent. Behind them, horns of bronze answered, sunspear and rose, antler and kraken. A second wave of dragons, smaller, younger, rose from hidden pens outside the city. They were not many, yet each bore a rider clad in patched mail and farmhand leathers. Peasant brothers, hedge knights, even convicted poachers who had sworn to dragon seeds in exchange for freedom. At their head flew a black-scaled she-dragon with wings dusted in silver freckles. Her rider, a girl of perhaps 15 with raven curls whipping about her face, leveled an iron-tipped lance and cried, "For Queen Rhaenys and for the realm!" The sight cracked something in Orion's composure. His legionaries hesitated. Captains glanced skyward with sudden doubt. The freehold had expected discipline, hierarchy, measured terror. They had not foreseen raw defiance rising from gutters and pastures, dragon seeds who barely knew a saddle. Rhaenys seized the instant. "People of Westeros," she shouted, voice ringing across smoking rooftops. "Lift your eyes. This is our fire." Our land. Our breath. Fly. Nasagawats. Meraxes surged, releasing a cataract of white-hot flame that carved a path through Orion's sky mages before their spell could complete. Dragon seed riders dove, exploiting gaps, spearing legionaries from saddles, grappling mid-air in desperate fury. On the ground, shield walls surged like iron tides, driving legionaries toward the bay choked with burning ships. Orion bellowed commands, but cohesion frayed. Shotothrilos tried to rally, banking to strike the black she-dragon, yet sunfire barreled from the side, jaws clamping onto the larger worm's exposed neck joint. Bones snapped. In agony, Shithurlo spiraled, its rider flung free to plunge into the flames consuming the sept's ruins. Night deepened, lit only by wildfire auroras and ember clouds. At last, as the moon reached zenith, horns of retreat sounded across Valyrian lines. Surviving legionaries fell back to the quay, scrambling aboard smoldering hulls that clawed from shore on tattered sails. Dragons labored to gain height, scorched, wing-torn, some collapsing into the bay. Rhaenys watched from Merax's saddle, shoulders sagging with exhausted triumph. "Westeros stands," she whispered, half in disbelief, half in prayer. Maelor landed beside her, face streaked with soot, one arm dangling limp where Orion's chain blade had torn flesh to bone. "For now," he said. "Dragons yet darken the horizon. This war is no single dawn." She gripped his uninjured hand. "But dawns gather. Each sunrise gives us one more breath, one more chance to forge unity the freehold cannot shatter." Below, small folk crawled from shattered houses to cheer, voices hoarse yet fierce. The black she-dragon circled overhead, her young rider raising a bloody lance in salute. Across the bay, Valyrian ships limped eastward, carrying tales of resistance beyond imagining. And somewhere beyond mortal sight, the 14 flames of Valyria surely guttered with foreboding, realizing that in challenging the children they had cast off, they had awakened something older than empire, the stubborn, ragged miracle of people who refused to kneel. Far across the narrow sea, in halls carved from living obsidian, the Archons listened to the first raven of ill news. Candles flickered green where no draft blew, and in that silence, the oldest among them spoke, voice thin as rice paper, foretelling a truth none wished to hear, that the freehold's greatest enemy had never been the doom nor the cost of hubris, but the spark of rebellion had left alive in every other land. Thus the war for Westeros had only begun, yet in its first clash the freehold had learned fear. And fear, once breathed, settles deep in the blood, waiting, patient as wildfire buried beneath a city, for the moment when one desperate soul chooses to set the world alight. Moonlight pooled in fractured gutters, glimmering upon the broken tiles and shattered gargoyles of King's Landing. Prince Maelor staggered down a flight of half-collapsed stairs inside the Red Keep, one gauntleted hand pressed to the wound along his ribs. Blood dotted the stone like dark roses, each drop reflecting the flicker of torches borne by scrambled maesters. A hush cloaked the corridors now. Neither the roar of dragons nor the clash of steel intruded, only a thin collective rasp of countless survivors breathing disbelief that they still lived. The city smelled of wet cinders and boiled pitch. The air tasted of copper and salt, as if someone had wrung the sea through a butcher's claw. At the Queen's solar, Grand Maester Orwell knelt beside a battered field table that sagged beneath new dispatches. He straightened when Maelor entered, etched concern replacing the usual ivory serenity of his features. "Sit," he ordered, abandoning ceremony. "The cut is deep and festers with foreign powder. Valyrian blades are seldom kind to wounded flesh." Maelor lowered himself onto a bench. The maester slit open his cuirass, peeled away silk and gorget now stiff with clotting. Pale flame-marked bruises scored the prince's shoulder where Orion's star-tipped flail had grazed him. Beneath, the true cut gaped 4 finger-widths, rimmed by an odd metallic sheen. "Obsidian dust," murmured the maester, sniffing the wound. "Mixed with powdered dragon bone. An alchemical venom. I must cauterize it once." "Do it," Maelor said. Soon the scent of seared meat rose. Champagne white washed his vision until the torchlight dissolved. When it cleared, he found Rainey standing across the table, armor plucked but unremoved, eyes aflame with sleepless determination. Her silver hair hung in singed ropes across her shoulders. Fresh sheets of parchment spread before her. Troop numbers, harbor tallies, dragon rosters. Every figure bled red ink. "We lost 3 dragons outright," she said without greeting. "Verdant among them. Brynden leapt free, broke both legs, but lives." Her gaze lingered on Maelor's bandaged side. "I may yet lose a brother, though." "I heal," he whispered, voice rasping like parchment. "Better than a realm with a slit throat. How fares the rest?" 4,000 small folk lie dead. Another 6,000 wounded or missing. 23 ships remain afloat, though half their masts are tinder. The Hightower fleet limps up from Old Town. 11 cogs. Dorne sends sand skiffs, but they're a fortnight away if the winds are kind. She exhaled through clenched teeth. Orion retreats to Dragonstone. Reports say he fortifies the old Valyrian stronghold on the island's eastern ridge, places scorpions along beaches, sets wardstones that twist winds against any daring approach. His own wounds are said to be grave, yet he still commands. Mai. Maelor pictured the silver-armored Archon astride his maimed dragon, jaw tight with both fury and awe at Westeros' stubborn refusal to kneel. "Hell not abandon conquest," Maelor said. "Hell tighten his fist and strike again once replacements arrive from the freehold." "If replacements come," Rhaenys replied, tapping a quill against the rim of an inkwell. "Our ravens to Pentos Mere and Lys spin tales of Valyrian arrogance humbled in these skies. The free cities hate their former masters almost as fiercely as they fear them. Scent weakness, and they may refuse tribute, delay supplies, sabotage convoys." Her eyes slid toward Nymeria Sand, who stepped from the shadows like a cat from drapes. "We must give them reason to believe Orion can indeed be broken," the spy mistress purred. "Send something impossible home in chains, or ash." Maelor's pulse thudded in his ears. "You mean capture Saturlos?" Nymeria smiled. "Or its rider. Imagine the freehold receiving the Archon's helm dipped in wildfire glass. Doubt would devour them sooner than swords." Rhaenys folded her arms. "Our dragons cannot challenge his yet. Meraxes bleeds from a dozen gashes. Sunfire lost feathers of membrane. He may barely carry Maelor from tower to tower." "I do not counsel dragons," Nymeria said. "I counsel shadows." She produced a small lacquered box. Within, nestled among rolls of black silk, lay a dull gray blade no longer than a woman's hand. Assassins steal from the kindly men of Bravos. They call it the quiet knife. Press the pommel and the blade liquefies, leaving nothing for interrogators to discover. Maelor lifted weary eyes. "An assassin on Dragonstone? Orion's wards will shred any ship before it kisses the shore." "Not a ship," Nymeria whispered. "A sowing of 4 dragon seeds. The children who rose today soared where grown knights would quail. They ride small, nimble worms that slip through cracks no great beast can follow. A handful might find a thermal current over the sea cliffs, evade palisades, land upon the very summit of Dragonmont." Silence stretched. Rhaenys flexed gloved fingers, gaze on the candle flame. "To send children into the heart of that hell." She closed her eyes. "But valor knows no age." She looked at Maelor. "Select riders, ones whose spirits burn brightest and whose allegiance lies not in blood but belief." The black she-dragon tucked her wings and skimmed across the water so low her claw tips dimpled wave crests. On her back, Asha Snow, bastard of a winter town fisherman, and known most as no more than a scrappy orphan, gripped the crude saddle, face split by wind and salt spray. Beside her flew 3 other dragonseed youths, Janna Fossaway on pale green Melisande, Craig Celtigar astride russet-breasted Quicksilver, and little Benny Storm riding the mottled blue hatchling head-named Sea Spear. Above them flickered a waning moon, half occluded by tattered smoke blown from the mainland. Before them loomed Dragonstone, its black crown lost inside thunderheads. Asha's breath quickened as they rose along the outer slopes. Pockmarks of emberlight showed Valyrian watchfires at cliff edges. Chain bows, stood like iron-throated gargoyles. Each pivoted toward passing clouds as though the fog might sprout wings at any moment. Rain began, steaming where it struck volcanic rock. The mounts hissed but held course. They banked to follow a jagged ravine choked in sulfur mist. Asha's palms sweated through her gloves. The rain slickened. She recalled Rhaenys' final instruction whispered hours earlier. The fate of kingdoms rides in mid-sky between your heartbeats. Do not count the beats, be them. Quicksilver veered, scouting ahead. Its rider tapped a lacquered rod secured to his harness. A faint red spark leapt, their signal for descent. The ravine narrowed into a lava tube vent that belched steam and glowing embers. One by one, the dragon's folded wings dropped into the throat of the mountain. Heat swallowed them. The dark vibrated with subterranean roar. The slow engine breath of something vast slumbering in tunnels, deeper than dread. Abruptly, the vent widened into a cavern, lit by pools of molten rock. Shadowed ramps led upward toward flickers of torchlight. They dismounted, boots splashing across hot gravel, and guided their dragons behind basalt pillars where fumes masked scent. Asha's mount nuzzled her shoulder, then stilled like a hunting hound. In the distance echoed the clang of forge hammers, Valyrians smithing new chained worm gear. Bennis drew the quiet knife from under his gambeson, cradling it as though it might sprout fangs. At 10 he was the youngest, chosen for his size. He could wriggle through vents no adult could hope to enter. His face, smudged in ash, looked like a child's ghost. "You're sure of the passage?" Asha asked. He nodded, lips blanching. "I remember the map Ser Jorah sketched, up 3 flights, past a bronze door carved with dragons eating suns. Then a vent behind the brazier opens on the Archon's bedchamber." Craig unslung a bundle of wildfire globes, each smaller than a hen's egg. "Scatter these through the wyvern pens on our way back," he whispered. "On your mark." Asha rose first. They crept along the ramp, soundless but for heartbeats. Valyrian voices drifted from side tunnels, laughter too sharp, too musical. Asha felt anger ice her spine. These invaders joked while Westerosi corpses lay scattered across Blackwater's shores. At the second landing, they met a lone legionary leaning over a parapet, muttering to himself. Janna's slingstone struck the base of his skull. He folded without sound. She caught the falling helmet before it clanged, toes sliding beneath to cushion armor. Together, they hauled him behind a column where magma light licked his now slack face. Third flight. Gilt sconces through sharp shadows. The bronze portal loomed ahead, heavy with embossed spirals of devouring dragons. Flamelight leaked from a sizable brazier sitting to its right. Bennis popped the pressure stud on the quiet knife. The blade melted, becoming a shimmering paste he smeared across the hinge. Steam hissed. Metal curled like scorched parchment. In less than half a minute the hinge collapsed inward. Bennis ducked behind the brazier, groping blind along volcanic stone until his fingers found the promised fissure. He vanished. Asha's breath halted. She forced herself to inhale. 1, 2, then circled with Craig and Janna, placing wildfire globes beneath stacked wyvern yoke barrels, waiting to feed the Archon's hatcheries. Emerald fluid dripped, smelling of rotted pears. A minute stretched infinite. Then Bennis slid back through the fissure, eyes wide. "Not sleeping," he hissed. "Reading scrolls. 2 officers present. He wears half armor. Dragon glass spear within reach." "None." Craig clenched his jaw. "Plan." Asha swallowed her pulse. "We adapt." She motioned Janna to the left flank of the doors, Craig to the right. Bennis clutched the final globe, heart loud in the silence. Asha shoved the portal inward. Orion's chamber was low-roofed, dominated by a central hearth where white flame danced in patterns dictated by sigils carved into the grate. Scroll racks lined every wall, scrolls sealed by jewels, glowing faintly. The Archon stood at a table, covered in silver filigree maps, one fist planted as he argued softly with the Stormbinder, like a Velaros. Both turned as the door boomed. Asha darted right, flinging a globe at Leika's feet. It shattered. Green fire erupted, licking up her greaves. Leika screamed, stumbled, rolled. Orion's spear snapped up. The point spat a whip of sapphire lightning that cracked across the chamber toward Crake. He dove, roll becoming slide, chainmail sparking. Janna's slingstone whizzed, clipping Orion's helm and tipping his balance. Benny sprinted straight for the Archon, both fists clutching the liquefied quiet knife now molded into a single dart. Orion kicked a stool into the boy's path. Benny's hurtled, almost. His trailing foot struck wood. He lurched. Orion's gauntlet seized the child by the throat. Time slowed. Asha lunged, sword glinting. Flames coated Laika, yet she managed to draw a side blade, slashing at Asha's flank. Asha parried, twisted, elbowed the Valyrian's mask. Glass cracked, revealing an eye blazing not with panic, but fanatical exultation. Laika laughed even as her hair ignited. Orion lifted Benny's high. The boy's lips purpled, yet his fingers found the collar seam of the Archon's cuirass and pressed the smearing blade paste there. It sank into the metal, spreading like mercury. Orion's eyes flickered confusion, then horror, then the paste burned him. Steam roared from the gap between gorget and flesh. Benny's fell, limp. Orion clawed at his throat. The molten metal seeped toward skin. His spear collapsed from concentration lapse. Crake leapt, driving a dirk into the Archon's thigh. Orion howled, backhanding the Celtigar youth across the table. Janna slipped behind, looped a sling cord around Orion's eyes, yanking tight. Asha pressed advantage. Sword point ran between ribs. Blood spurted black under moonlight torchlight. Laika roared something in Old Valyrian and hurled herself across the chamber. Together she and Asha crashed through scroll shelves, papyrus fluttering like startled doves. Orion sagged, breath a choked gurgle. He dropped to one knee. Benny stirred, coughing. Janna hauled him back. Crake rose, nose bleeding, reached for another dirk, but Orion's hand shot out, grabbing Crake's wrist. The Archon's strength remained monstrous. He wrenched Crake close, hissed words that made air crystallize frost blue. Crake screamed as veins blackened. He froze solid mid-gasp. Janna shrieked, slinging a stone that lodged in Orion's cheek. Half blind, bleeding, the Archon lurched after her, but stumbled into the hearth. Flames danced up his tattered cloak, consuming. He laughed, ragged, triumphant, then crumpled. Firestorm devoured robes, hair, and at last breath itself. A single moment later, the dragon glass spear inside the room exploded in sympathetic magic. Shards sluiced outward, shredding rugs, scrolls, like a burning corpse, and final hope of salvage. Asha dragged Janna and Benny's from the chamber, just as shockwaves flung molten timber down the corridor. Wildfire globes behind combusted. Green inferno belched through cracks, chasing them into the tunnel network. They sprinted for the lava vent stable. Overhead, alarms clanged. Legionaries thundered in pursuit, but already the chambers behind collapsed as cascading flames reached munitions caches. Dragons shrieked within stalls. Asha's mount roared, sensing her fear. She flung Benny's onto the saddle, vaulted up, pulled Janna behind. Crake's saddle remained empty, frozen to stone. Tears carved ash down Asha's cheeks, but she snapped reins. Upward the dragons soared along the vent shaft, that now coughed smoke and debris. A chain bow rotated, loosing bolt after bolt. One glanced off Melisandre's tail. The pale worm spun shrieking. Yet they burst free into open cloud, wings hammering against scalding downdrafts as Dragonstone roared behind, a volcano lit in unnatural emerald fury. From a mile out over moon-silvered sea, Asha looked back. Flames spiraled from fissures. Entire batteries of scorpions slid into boiling surf. Even from that distance she thought she saw Orion's personal banner topple from the Widow's Walk, catch the wind, and vanish into darkness. At King's Landing bells tolled at dawn, not for mourning but proclamation. Queen Rhaenys stood upon the Red Keep's highest parapet, gazing east where the horizon reddened not from dragonfire but honest sunrise. Maelor, pale yet upright beside her, accepted a goblet of honeyed milk from Orwell and sipped, each swallow painful but strengthening. Asha Snow knelt before the queen, clothes scorched, curls matted with soot. Janna bowed, arm in sling. Benny's half hid behind them, one eye blackened. "You have done what armies could not," Rhaenys said. "The Archon lies dead. Dragonstone burns. His Sky Legion leaderless." Asha's voice quavered. "Craik Celtigar fell buying our escape, your grace." "He shall be sung," Rhaenys promised. "And all Westeros will know the valor of dragon seeds." She turned. Heralds unfurled new banners across the courtyard. Black field, three-headed dragon, but crowned with a burst of green flame. Small folk below stared, mouths agape, then cheered raggedly until brickwork trembled. Maelor squeezed Asha's shoulder. "This war is not over," he said. "More legions may come, but today the world learned the freehold can bleed." From the city gates rose fresh horns. Dust-stained riders galloped in, tabards of pentos and mirror flashing. They bore sealed letters edged in gold. Nymeria Sand emerged onto the parapet, reading the first dispatch with a grin that looked positively feral. "The free cities," she announced, "have declared a League of Liberty. They pledge ships, coin, and spies, in exchange for trade and the promise that no throne shall ever again claim bondsman over another." She lifted her gaze to Rhaenys. "Shall we sign, my queen?" Rhaenys breathed in dawn air, laced with the faintest scent of smoke and possibility. "We shall write a charter on fresh parchment," she said, "and sign it in the ink of our choosing. Not in fear, nor in borrowed titles, but in the free hand of a realm reborn." Far across the narrow sea, embers of rebellion smoldered beneath every marble avenue of Valyria. News of Orion's death spread like plague fire, igniting riots in the slave districts, muters in the collegia of mages, whispers among fearful archons who now glimpsed a future where their sky-born supremacy was no longer divine decree. Stormbinder Laika's charred corpse would be interred with grand rites, but even the funeral pyres could not mask the scent of revolution seeping into the freehold's very bones. And so dragons wheeled in the fractured skies over Westeros. Some wounded, some newborn, yet all unbroken, while below 1,000 hammers rang in smithies rebuilding shattered gates, and the voices of farmers, nobles, and orphaned children alike melded into a single rising chorus that carried across hills and along rivers. "Never again!" Wind rattled the arrow-scarred shutters of Maegor's Holdfast, casting restless shadows across the council chamber where braziers burned low and orange. Ash still seeped under doorframes, drawn by the night breeze that rolled off the smoking shell of the dragon pit below. Yet the air smelled faintly of lavender. The maids had strewn petals to hide charred plaster and blood. Queen Rhaenys stood at the window in a robe of plain wool, crown absent, studying the sliver of dawn rising over Blackwater Bay. Her face was drawn and sleepless, but in her eyes burned a purpose brighter than sunrise. Behind her, Edric Arryn shuffled parchments, clearing a space at the long table for the latest arrivals. The dwarf-nosed envoy from Pentos bowed stiffly, his satin sleeves still crusted with salt from a frantic crossing. Next to him loomed a Lysine magister whose scented oils only half concealed the stench of smoke embedded in every traveler lately come from the east. Together, they presented a single sheet sealed in violet wax, the charter of the new League of Liberty, bold as prophecy on the page. Rhaenys turned at last. "This league exists in ink," she said, voice hoarse from too many nights in smoke. "Ink will not shield your cities when Valyria returns." Magister Darrow of Lys inclined a shaved head. "Ink, no. Coin, yes, and ships enough to choke the gullet. Give us a claim to honest trade, no tribute, no lash, and we will fight beside you until the 14 flames burn out." "Honest trade?" the queen echoed. "Show me an honest magister, and I'll believe you breed them by the dozen." Yet a ghost of amusement touched her mouth. They all knew necessity's jokes. She accepted the parchment and pressed her signet into the wax. "Very well. Liberty bought with coin is still liberty." Pen scratched as Arryn countersigned. Even that small sound seemed too loud in halls where so many voices had fallen silent only 2 nights before. Far across the narrow sea, the city of Valyria lay draped in volcanic twilight, its impossible bridges and fused glass towers reflecting the ceaseless glow of the 14 flames. In a forum, hewn from living obsidian, 11 archons assembled around a basin of molten rock. Each wore war masks carved in the likeness of long-dead fire gods. In place of Orion's seat stood an empty iron frame, edges still black from the moment his helm had burst into green wildfire days before. No one had dared remove it yet. Archon Marvax Magyar, whose veins were said to carry magma instead of blood, rapped a scepter against basalt. The Western expedition faltered because it was led by a dreamer who mistook arrogance for certainty, he intoned. We will not repeat that error. Nor the error of underestimating mongrel resolve, added Para Ularian, her veil shimmering with hot cinders. Children's knives, he called them. A knife in the dark spilled Orion's blood all the same. A hiss rippled round the forum. Slaves with mirrored shields knelt at every archon's feet. Their reflections showed not faces, but livid tongues of flame. Marvax turned to the youngest seat, where Cassandros Scenarian leaned casually against a crimson drake-toothed staff. You claim you can break Westeros with a single wing beat, boy. Speak. Notwithstanding, Cassandros smiled. A thin crescent. Not with a wing beat, honored elders. With a word. He tapped the staff, and the basin of molten rock contracted, shapes rising within, a map of Westeros in glowing slag. Here, he said, pointing to the neck where hot stone pulsed brightest. We open the earth itself. The long flame, our eldest furnace, has veins deeper than lore. We set a shard of that hunger beneath their lands. When the signal comes, every river from Moat Cailin to the Trident will boil. Their harvests will rot in the fields. Their very soil will scream. Some archons murmured approval. Others stiffened. A cataclysm? Asked Para. We mean to rule that continent, not incinerate it. Cassandros' eyes glinted lavender. What grows again grows loyal. Fear will prune them into obedience. Before debate could swell, a runner in soot-black livery dashed between pillars, prostrating himself. Archons, he panted, the slave wards. They have breached the Bronze Gate. Fire Mage Collegia reports sabotage. Sky lances shattered. Hatchling pits opened. Nemsuni Mamorn. The archons rose in a clang of metal. Slave revolts were not unheard of. But the Bronze Gate protected the sacred loom where dragon eggs were sorted by bloodsong. To lose it would be a stain no mask could hide. Para's gaze settled on Cassandros. Your word, it seems, may be needed sooner, in your own streets. His smile did not dim. Then, let the word be spoken here first. He lifted the drake staff. Flame spiraled upward, coalescing into a crimson glyph that hovered above the basin. Izanar. Across the city, 10,000 chained furnaces flared as one, bathing the night in red deeper than heart's blood. Somewhere far below, something vast and ancient stirred, as though the freehold had called its own doom to heel like a hunting hound. In King's Landing sunlight found no unbroken pane of glass to gild, but children still chased it across rubble-strewn lanes, laughing because laughter was the strongest mortar they possessed. Prince Maelor moved among them on crutches, heeling shoulders strapped tight, his golden-white dragon sunfire circling high overhead as a watchful star. He had insisted on walking the streets daily. Every nod from a baker, every salute from a soot-smeared mason bolstered him more than any draught of poppy. Near the ruined sept he paused, where a broad-shouldered northern smith raised a makeshift forge under open sky. The man hammered scales of castle-forged steel onto a boiled leather arming jacket sized for a child. Dragons need armor, he grunted without looking up. So do their riders. If the freehold thinks to bring skylances again, let them strike iron. Nepurnas. Maelor flexed his fingers. The scar in his side throbbed in the cool air. Name? Tommen Stone by the old laws. Bastard o' Winterfell once. The hammer rang. Now I serve the fire that keeps us all alive, seems. The prince touched the fresh riveted plates. Good work. Present yourself to the keep when the sun's at zenith. I'll see you supplied. He left a pouch of silver on the anvil and limped on, drawing warmth from the smith's surprised oath. At the just-repaired river gate, his path crossed that of Asha snow, the dragon seed whose audacity had ended an archon. She leaned on the railing, black dragon perched behind her like a folded knight. People greeted her with shy awe, proffering bread, a sprig of firemint, a newborn babe to touch for luck. She accepted each with awkward grace. Maelor joined her, both watching barges haul stone upriver to patch the ramparts. "I dreamed of peace as a boy," he said quietly. "But peace seems always waiting beyond another gate of iron and smoke." Asha's eyes tracked a gull diving for charred fish. "Dream of flight instead, my prince. Up there, you see the war entire. Its edges have shape, and shape can be broken." She tapped his bandaged arm. "Heal fast. The sky misses you." Across the reach, winter wheat rippled like dull gold under broken aqueducts where dragons had never flown. Yet new wings cut these skies now. Sleek courier worms bred by House Tarley, dispatched east with messages sealed in gold leaf. At Old Town, the Lord's Hightower lit beacons that had not burned since the Age of Heroes, summoning every ship from the arbor to Bear Island. Even the Ironborn answered, half in hope of plunder, half to spite any realm that dared enslave them. At Winterfell, Lady Sansa Stark read Rhaenys' plea by lamplight, while snow whispered against the shutters. She summoned maesters, scribes, warriors. "We remember the long night," she told them. "We warmed the world with our blood once. If fire comes again, we'll meet it not with ice alone, but with swords drawn in free hands." Shortly after, ravens burst from her rookery like dark petals blown on a northern gale, bearing seals pressed in the shape of a direwolf devouring a dragon's tail. A promise of allegiance nodded with warning. "The North follows no queen who would forge new chains." Rhaenys read that line twice, then a third time, and a slow smile crept across soot-stained features. "No chains," she murmured. "So be it." Nymeria's sand slipped through alleys even the city's rats had abandoned. Her sand-silk boots hushed as mist. At a tavern whose sign showed a mummer juggling daggers, she met two shadows from Bravos, kindly men who never smiled, and an exile from Korth swathed in peacock feathers. Before dawn they departed by hidden postern, bound for Volantis. Their task, to seed every slave market with rumor that the freehold's fetters were cracking, and Westeros welcomed any who broke their chains. Gold changed hands, codes were memorized, cold iron dirks, kissed by Shadeborn, poisons were distributed like grim blessings. While spymasters dealt in whispers, the maesters turned to stranger science. In the bowels of the Red Keep, Archmaester Durin, once dismissed from the Citadel for dabbling in hermetic metallurgy, poured molten obsidian into molds cooled by snow, fetched from the winter town by raven-led airship. The result was a black glass bolt veined in starlight, light as pine but unyielding as pride. Gyron tested one against Merax's shed scale. The bolt split the hardened plate clean, embedding in stone behind. His gasp echoed like prophecy. By dusk, an entire foundry clanged to life, forging dozens more. Weeks passed. Smoke cleared enough for grass to peek green on the city's outer slopes. Yet each dawn watchers on the eastern walls noted a glimmer on the horizon, the masts of a freehold relief fleet gathering in Cohor's shadow. One crispy noon, Sir Brynden Hightower limped to the war room bearing a captured cipher. "Intercepted bird from the Volantine quartermaster," he said, planting the scroll. 30 warships, under Archon Marvax, will weigh anchor within 10 days. Purpose: transport of a heart furnace and its slaves. Maesters conferred. Legends spoke of furnaces so hot they could crack the earth and drink magma. Rhaenys' expression hardened. "We strike them on the water." Aaron frowned. "Our fleet is a patchwork of fishing trawlers and arbor wine galleys. There'll be lambs before lion prows. Then lions must grow wings." Nymeria spread a sheaf of maps showing shoals, tides, and prevailing winds. "We cannot outgun them. We can outthink them. Here, Sailor's Grave, a reef maze east of the Stepstones. At full tide their deep-draught monsters will scrape bottom." She turned to Maelor. "Can Sunfire still perch?" "He can burn," the prince said simply. A plan formed as quick as wildfire takes to dry cloth. They set sail at dusk 3 days later. Harridan's Resolve, flagship of the League, led 37 smaller hulls, swift cogs from Pentos, arbor wine clippers stripped of cargo racks, iron-borne longships whose crews sang of drowned gods and living fire alike. At night, dragons skimmed overhead, their reflections sliding like burning ghosts across black water. On decks, archers rubbed obsidian-laced grease into bowstrings. Alchemists secured casks of green death against the roll. 2 dawns out, they met the freehold convoy under graying skies. Storm swells hammered both lines. Giant war dromons bearing copper-plated rams advanced in crescent formation, sails blood-red, hulls bristling with scorpion towers. Between them rode a barge the size of a small island, walls of dark steel encasing a forge whose chimney spewed crimson sparks. The heart furnace. As planned, Harridan's Resolve feigned retreat toward Sailor's Grave. The Valyrian admiral pursued, sure of crushing prey between rams and reef. Spray hissed along black prows as they entered the maze of unseen coral. On hidden shoals, fish bones of old wrecks jutted like teeth. The Westerosi cogs turned tight circles, nimble as swallows. The dromons wallowed. From the sky Sunfire stooped, gold-white flame bathing the lead warship's mast. Heat met oils, rigging burst like torch-dipped flax. Bullinets tipped with obsidian weights rained from Nymeria's flyer, entangling scorpion arms before their crews could train upward. The real blow came from below. Iron-borne longships, hulls sheathed in pitch-black tar to mimic shoal water, rammed the dromons amidships. At the same instant, archers on arbor schooners loosed a hail of Durin's obsidian bolts. Barbed tips pierced copper plates, then the casks strapped inside. A heartbeat later, wildfire licked outward through neat little holes, greedily inhaling air. Green towers blossomed along decks. Men screamed. The sea hissed. Yet the heart furnace pressed on, oars the length of towers beating, pushing aside allies aflame. Its forward ramp lowered. From the interior marched a cohort in mirror armor, chanting syllables that distorted wind, heat-warding, fire-bending, heart-rend spells older than tongues. They drove knives into their own forearms, feeding the forge with blood through gutters in the deck. The chimney roared brighter. Sulfuric vapors seeped, curling into shapes of snarling drakes. Mailer wheeled Sunfire alongside Rhaenys atop Merax's. No words were needed, they dove together. Flame met furnace vent. The vent devoured flame and spat it back threefold, a blinding geyser of white heat that scorched even dragonscale. Sunfire shrieked, veering. Mailer tasted copper in the air, blood from his reopened wound. On the decks below, Asha Snow and her black dragon knifed in crosswings, disgorging a sack of dwarf-made smoke bombs that burst on impact. Violet clouds sucked the furnace's breath, buying heartbeats. From Harridan's Resolve, Archmaester Gyron himself stepped onto a catapult arm rigged with counterweights. He cradled a single bolt the size of a javelin, obsidian-veined, not with starlight, but with veins of molten gold. He whispered a formula of unmaking as the crew loosed the winch. The world slowed, bolt arcing like Knight's own spear, slicing through smoke, punching the furnaces, stack just where iron gave way to raw, blazing heartstone. A sound like mountains splitting swallowed all others. The chimney ruptured, vomiting shards of red-hot ore that rained upon drifting hulks. The heart furnace buckled, its deck sagged, molten slag poured seawards, turning waves to clouds of steam. Even the mirror-armored cohort faltered, their chants breaking in shock as their forge unforged itself around them. Merax's, wounded but furious, plunged once more. Her ivory jaws clamped the ruptured stack, wrenching it sideways. In the split heartbeat before she released, Rhaenys dropped a cask of wildfire into the glowing hole. Emerald bloom erupted from within like a doomed sun. The barge shattered. A plume soared so high it sizzled rain clouds. One by one the dromons quit the fight, oars mangled on reef, sails scorched, officers dead. Those that could still move rowed east, pursued by longships howling drowned god hymns. When the smoke cleared, Sailor's Grave was littered with warped copper plates and the floating carcasses of once proud warships. Harridan's Resolve listed with half her yard smashed, But cheers burst from her deck while wounded dragons circled overhead in ragged victory. News of the convoy's ruin reached Valyria on wings of terror. Slave districts erupted like anthills kicked by titans. Chain cults melted their own collars in stolen acid. Even minor houses of the blood began whispering the same unthinkable question. Had the old power outlived its dominion? Archon Marvac strangled the messenger who brought him the tidings, but no amount of blood could drown the fear creeping through palaces. Masks began to crack, literally, in some cases, hairline fractures skittering across obsidian visages as if the stone itself recoiled from its wearers. Cassandros alone seemed untroubled. From balconies overlooking the slave fires, he spoke to the surging crowd in a voice magnified by unseen engines. "Their fleet burns," he called. "They will claim this as omen of our end. I tell you, it is omen of our rebirth. For centuries we hoarded gods within these flames. We denied them air, denied them tribute. Now we shall open the vault and let them breathe again, through us." That night, slaves chained 3 generations rose in rapture when the boy Archon ordered doors smashed. But as they poured into the sacred loom, they found not freedom, but a towering dragon egg flecked with veins of molten silver. Cassandros placed a hand upon it. The shell pulsed, cracking, and a scream, not the cry of any earthly beast, shivered the stone beneath every foot in the city. In Westeros, the stars wheeled into autumn. Harvests softened the scars of war, though many fields were worked by widows in black. At River Run, a Congress of Lords convened to carve a new covenant. Some argued for a realm of houses bound only by mutual defense, others for a high crown tempered by charter. The debates rang till torches guttered. Through it all, Rhaenys listened, her gaze shifting from parchment to faces. Grizzled Blackwood patriarchs, copper-skinned Dornish water traders, shell-shocked lads from the Shield Islands, each voice a thread in a new tapestry no single hand could weave. When at last she stood to speak, the hall hushed. "Blood won the realm my forebear claimed," she said. "But blood alone could not keep it. It took faith and fear, and sometimes tyranny. We have seen where tyranny leads, so I will not tell you what kingdom we must be. I ask, instead, what people we choose to become, free to bend knee or stand tall, free to bend knee or stand tall, free to worship 7 gods or none, free to trade a bushel of barley for a bolt of silk without a master's lack." She lifted her goblet. "To freedom sworn in fire, tempered in mercy." The hall lifted cups, some grudging, more inspired. Outside, ravens burst to every horizon with drafts of the new charter. Maelor, watching from a curtained alcove, felt tears he hadn't known remained slip through his lashes. Sunfire's mind brushed his, proud, inquisitive, alive, a golden echo of the words just sworn. The prince realized that whatever crown he might one day wear would sit lighter because a heavier burden had been laid down tonight. But crowns elsewhere were fastening themselves with nails of terror. Cassandros, self-anointed herald of flame, marched from Valyria at the head of a new legion, whose armor seemed poured rather than forged, every plate glowing from within. Above them wheeled a single dragon colossal beyond saga. The hatchling that had cracked the silver-veined egg needed no decades to grow. Fed by the 14 flames, it had emerged full-winged and full wrath. Its scales were black shot through with rivers of fiery quartz, its eyes twin furnaces. The herald named it Valyria's world pyre. Across the disputed lands fields blackened beneath its shadow, though no fire yet fell. Cities bartered for time with tribute of blood and gold. Mercenary companies deserted rather than face a nightmare fresh born of the earth's heart. Word reached Westeros days before the first embers of Valyrian banners appeared on the horizon. Maesters calculated distance, dragon speeds, possible landing sites. Every figure painted a single truth. Valyrians, as large as Meraxes and Sunfire combined, would arrive within a month, born by a legion whose sorcery had tasted royal blood and found it sweet. In the war room, Rhaenys reflected on the map, palm resting on the riverlands. "We cannot meet that thing over open fields," she said, "nor above the sea. We might fell it, but the ruin would drown half the realm. Maelor exhaled. Draw it somewhere empty, a place of stone and snow. Nymeria traced a finger northward. The valley of frozen tears, beyond last hearth. Crags to limit wing beats, basalt pillars for scorpions, no fields to burn, no towns to shatter. Aaron frowned. Lure them into the heart of winter? Our own men will freeze before battle's end. Unless winter fights for us, murmured Lady Sansa, who had come south with a wedge of northern riders. She tapped the map. Beneath that valley runs a labyrinth of meltwater caverns. My ancestors diverted hot springs there centuries ago. Steam fissures lace the ice sheet. You cannot see them until your foot breaks through. Her eyes, blue as the far north, lifted to the Queen. A dragon that size weighs leagues. If we can crack the ice under its landing, Rhaenys' gaze sharpened. We would drown a fire born of the world's core in the world's oldest coal. She turned to the Archmaester. Can obsidian bolts fracture a glacier? With enough, Gyron said. And time to the dragon's landing. Maelor set his jaw. Then Sunfire and I will guide him down. Rhaenys whirled. You're barely healed. Nor will I ever be if our realm burns. My place is in the sky. She gripped his forearms, searching. What she saw there, resolve, perhaps the same reckless hope that had lit Aegon's eyes 200 years before, left her no ground to argue. She nodded once. Then we ride together, you and I, one last time. Preparations spanned 3 fevered weeks. Northmen cut scorpion beds into basalt spires until their axes rang like bells beneath aurora skies. Dornish engineers hauled casks of wildfire on sledges pulled by shaggy mountain goats. From the Eyrie came giant moonstone spheres filled with flash powder. From the Iron Islands, harpoons linked with chains as thick as a man's wrist. In the center of the valley, a great fissure already breathed white mist. Maesters called it the Widow's Maw. Locals shunned it, claiming a beast of smoke lived in the depths. They would soon feed it a greater beast. The night before battle, Rhaenys walked alone between rows of sleeping soldiers wrapped in furs, her breath pluming silver. She paused at each scorpion crew, touching a shoulder here, a helm there, uttering a blessing older than the 7. When she reached Maelor's pavilion, she found him awake, mending a strap on Sunfire's saddle by lantern light. He glanced up. Father used to say war is mostly waiting. Your father never waited for this, she said, and knelt, helping thread the final buckle. Their hands worked in quiet harmony. Outside, the wind carried distant howls, wolves singing to an indifferent moon. Rhaenys finished the knot, then placed a small object on Maelor's palm. A ring of Valyrian steel shaped like a dragon devouring its tail. Mothers, she said. A memory of what we fight to keep. She closed his fingers over it. Come dawn, keep your eyes on me. I'll mark the wind with Merax's flame. When it turns white, loose Sunfire's cry. Our archers will fire then, no sooner. He nodded, throat too tight for words. Dawn painted the valley in pastel rose. Hoarfrost glittered on scorpion limbs, on the eyelashes of men whose faces were already masked in wool and ice. In the hush before sunrise, a vibration rippled the air, too deep for sound, felt in bones more than ears. Valyria crested the northern ridge like a storm cloud-grown talons. Its shadow drowned the valley. On its back stood Cassandros clad in armor the color of fresh blood, fire glyphs spiraling across his chest. Behind came the Legion, lesser dragons circling like sparks about a bonfire. Rhaenys' voice cracked across the frozen silence. Hold! Meraxes rose, ivory wings beating snow into starbursts. Sunfire leapt beside her, gold against pearl. They climbed, curving away, baiting the monster from on high. Cassandros laughed, a sound carried on tongues of flame that licked the wind. Valyria answered with a roar that fractured stone, then flung itself forward. Speeds beyond reason brought them over the valley, in heartbeats. Sunfire darted, teasing, spitting flame that washed harmless across quartz-scaled chest. But the behemoth followed, hunger bright in furnace eyes. Rhaenys tipped Meraxes into a dive, trailing white fire. A signal. Maelor saw it, yanked Sunfire hard. The gold dragon banked over the Widow's Maw, hovered, beating wings that whipped snow into spirals. Below, scorpion crews sighted on swirling light, fingers clenched around Gyron's star-vein bolts. Cassandros urged Veteres into the lure. The giant descended, talons crunching ice, head reared to snap sunfire from the sky. At that instant, Rhaenys exhaled a pillar of flame so hot, it flashed pale as winter's sun. Maelor spurred sunfire into a towering scream. Obsidian bolts launched. Chains sang gato. Flash powder spheres arced downward. The glacier erupted in spiderweb fractures. Veteres' weight plunged a claw through, then the other. With a sound like the world's back breaking, the ice shelf collapsed inwards. Steam geysers enveloped the Titan. Its roar warped into a hiss as boiling water swallowed furnace heat. Chains anchored to basalt pillars yanked tight, dragging wings below the surface. Cassandros hurled incantations, but spells fizzled against numbing cold. A final bolt, Gyron himself at the crank, pierced the herald's chest, pinning him to his beast's neck. Both slid beneath churning slush, into caverns where spring melt met ancient chill. The water flash froze, an instant tomb of crystal. Silence fell, broken only by cracking ice as the fissure sealed itself with sudden frost. Meraxes landed hard, wings trembling. Rhaenys dismounted into knee-deep snow. Soldiers emerged from trenches, cheers stunned at first, then rising until they shook the pillars. Maelor descended, stumbling as feet met earth. He and his sister embraced amid falling ice dust. Across the ridge, the remaining Valyrian dragons wheeled, riderless or wounded. Some fled eastward, others crashed panicked into the mountains. Northern archers refrained from pursuit. The sky itself seemed too sacred a place for further slaughter. Above the valley a strange hush settled. Steam rose where fire had met ancient cold, catching sunbeams in shimmering columns. In their midst, the glacier groaned one last time, then stilled, holding within its frozen heart a myth too terrible to roam. Months later, green returned even to the north. At Winterfell's Godswood, sap-steamed where the first buds endured new spring. There, beneath a heart tree older than Valyria, Queen Rhaenys signed the Winterfell Accords, a pact of free thrones, each kingdom sovereign yet bound by open roads, open ports, and a single oath, to chain no folk in life or labor. Prince Maelor witnessed, scar on his side twinging in the chill, sunfire resting beyond the walls on a perch of newly quarried granite. Asha Snow, named Lady of Skyfires by Rhaenys' decree, stood quietly among northern banners. She felt more at home here than in any hall of southern stone. The wind smelled of pine and endless horizons. Tommen Stone, now master armorer, presented her with a coat lined in supple bearskin and scaled with star steel. She donned it like second wings. As the ink dried, a raven arrived, tatters of foreign silk tied to its leg. Nymeria Sand read the scroll, lips curving. "Volantis has risen," she murmured to Rhaenys. Slave collars piled in every square. "They name you Firebreaker and beg recognition." The queen glanced at the horizon where dawn lit the mountains rose gold. "One land at a time," she said softly. "But tell them, the sky is wide, and there are dragons enough for all who dare ride free." High above, Meraxes banked in lazy circles, joined by smaller shapes, dragon seeds drilling new formations. Their shadows rippled over meadow, river, and rebuilt town alike, yet none flinched. Where once dragons ruled by terror, now they heralded something stranger, hope winged in fire. From distant Valyria, silent for months, no new mask-clad emissaries came. Some said the freehold splintered into warring city-states, their forges cold, their towers dim. Others whispered the 14 flames burned yet, but under new masters who studied the lesson carved in northern ice, that no furnace can outshine the stubborn light in mortal hearts. Time would judge. For now, children sketched dragons not swallowing men but soaring beside them. Farmers sang while mending fences that war had broken. Somewhere, a blacksmith hammered steel into plowshare rather than sword, sparks flying like meteors that foretold calmer heavens. And on a lone parapet of Winterfell, Prince Maelor watched sunset bleed into starlight, hand resting on the Valyrian ring, devouring its own tail. He understood, perhaps for the first time, why circles possess no end, not to trap, but to remind that every ending curls toward a new beginning. Fiery, uncertain, and luminously free.